I'm a professor of anthropology at UCM and the director of the McClure Archives and University Museum. So anthropology is the study of human beings, study of humanity. It studies human beings everywhere they exist, and it studies human beings over space and through time. Regardless of geography, really regardless of planetary geography, we study humans everywhere they go. If human beings or their ancestors have had a footprint in it, then anthropologists are interested in studying it. Well, I teach full-time, so I teach classes, and then I do a lot of mentoring students. I do a lot of overseeing research projects, and then I have my own research, so I'm always working. I work a lot on research. Most of my published work, some of it has been about museum work, but most of it has been about queer world making and popular music. So I've published a book on that and jazz and on that and heavy metal. And then really most of my research focuses on queer fans of heavy metal and queer performers in heavy metal music.
My name is Brianna Kyle, but I performed for the last almost 17 years underneath the name Verona, the Queen of Pain Fink. I am an international performing sideshow suspension artist and body piercer modification artist. I actually grew up in Missouri, partly. I was raised all over the United States due to being in a military family, so I kind of traded bases every 3 months to 3 years. And then we landed here in Missouri at Richards Gebauer, and I've been here ever since. I'm already halfway to each coast, so there's no point in moving. So I am located inside Weirdo's Tattoo in Belton, Missouri, 521 North Scott Avenue. I joined here about 7 to 8 years ago. They didn't have a piercer. I wasn't going to be a carny forever. Already made a living off of stabbing myself, so I figured I'd like stabbing others.
Body modification can have a variety of definitions, but for me that means a human-made modification to the body by choice or by cultural requirement.
So body modifications actually technically encompass everything from tattoos, piercings, to getting breast augmentations done, to getting lip fillers, eyelid lifts, just subdermal implants, tongue splits, big slots in the ear. We give people orc ears, elf ears. All of that actually encompasses body modification. Body modification is basically modifying your body outside of its natural state of birth. Coloring your hair is body modification.
You know, recent research has shown us that you see body modification of various types around the world, going back to 3000 to 4000 BCE. So we see it everywhere on the planet. The oldest version that we have of it is Ötzi, who's a mummy, and Ötzi is about 3000 BCE. And then we have mummified remains from other places on the planet that show evidence of body modification as well. Since the study of modification in anthropology is fairly recent, but the renewed interest in it has caused a lot of new discoveries to be found around the world. You see body modification everywhere in the United States at this point. That was not the way that it used to be. Body modification used to be something that was very taboo.
Body mods started off with having propaganda long time ago. The initial people that were pulled over into the United States were labeled as savages. They were the painted people, the pintados, and they had tattoos down them, which throughout history, people with tattoos have been labeled as savages because, and piercings, mods, any kind of stretching, like African tribes, they've all been labeled as savages because the way society went at that time, in order to be able to take over a country that was inhabited with people, you had to prove they were no better than dogs, basically. And at that time, dogs were thought of as not exactly man's best friends still. They were work animals and things like that, protection animals. So they were labeled as savages, and that started a lot of propaganda with tattooing for a long time until the original tattoo artist came around.
So, as I said, the perception historically of people with body mods was that they were extreme outsiders, right? Sailors in the Navy and prisoners in prison and that sort of thing. But over time, we've seen this really big shift in that, especially with tattoos and piercings, less or so with scarification, although we're seeing that too, right? And I think that change over time has to do with a couple of things. I think it has to do, first of all, with sort of the dispersal of veterans, right? And the tattoos that go with them. I think you could see some of that culturally. I think you could see the popularity of looking at prison culture as another sort of vehicle for it to spread regionally and then nationally.
That propaganda lasted for a long time, and it still does. It's been depicted in movies as people with tattoos and stuff like that were really horrible people. But what society fails to realize is some of these people they created. They were looked down upon so poorly while being a good person that they decided that, fine, I'm going to jump headfirst into this and live it fully, and it makes me feel the best about myself, and that becomes their armor.
Body modification can be a little tricky in terms of material culture because we're often talking about the skin, right? But with piercings, it's a little bit easier. But even in terms of tattooing, scarification, and that sort of thing, you can use photographs as a method of collecting it as a type of material culture, or the tools used to do it as examples of material culture. And understanding those different approaches to a ubiquitous thing, right? That there are Japanese tattoo tools and traditions, and there are Australasian traditions, and there are American traditions. That's why they call one style American traditional, right? So understanding through material culture all of those differences, regionally, geographically, historically, that's what material culture does for you. They tell you a lot about unwritten language, about family symbols, clan symbols, cultural symbolism appears in all of those things. They tell us frequently about, even in the United States, about the shift from adolescence into adulthood. Yeah, even in the United States, the time where you do tattoos tends to be when you're shifting into a period of adulthood, so we can see it that way. You can also see in that this very specific way of identifying yourself with your culture, right? That it serves as a phenomenon where you say, this is where I'm from.
I was born in Wisconsin, but we moved here when I was in elementary school. Small town life, little Midwestern, Higginsville, Missouri. This is my daughter. This is my daughter, Madeline. I actually have triplets, and she is one of my triplets. I have 2 boys and a girl, and Madeline was actually the first triplet born. So she's number
Special.
1. Yeah, I guess so. Yes, you are. I'm a single mom. It was just me and the kids, really, and I guess grandma, but it was just the 4 of us. So we're very close. When I was in college in the 90s, it was just kind of, it was just kind of there, hidden. Like, not everybody had tattoos, and if they did, they were kind of the bad kids, or the military kids or something like that. Like, it wasn't a big thing, but I always liked it. Like, there's this guy I dated for a little while, and he had a tattoo on his shoulder, and I was like, ooh, I like that. And I don't know, I just always liked it, and I was attracted to it, and I was interested in the art form of it.
I lived on a farm most of my life, so if it wasn't for living on a farm, I wouldn't have had access to tools that I probably shouldn't have had access to at a young age. But, I mean, I was using them safely, at least. I was trained to use them safely then. But it was also, I grew up in a time where a lot of people, and it's still that time, but a lot of people in this area, very rural, a lot of country people, weren't used to seeing someone who was very openly eccentric. So that did kind of influence a little bit. At one point, it became kind of a mission for me of like, yeah, I'm going to live openly how I feel I want to look, and it makes me feel good about myself. So I'm going to do that whether or not the people around here like it or not. I saw Enigma from Jim Rose Circus Sideshow, and he had his tongue split. And I was like, snake. I like that. I want to do that. And yeah, that was like my actual first time. I was like maybe 13. But the best part is most people find out that I grew up on a farm and grew up, riding horses and showing cattle and shearing sheep. And they're like, oh, you're just the coloring book version of us. And I'm like, yeah. You can take the girl off the farm, but you can't take the alternative out of the girl, I am pure alternative.
But I was a heavy metal kid. I was a working class heavy metal kid. And I guess I decided that black T-shirts and Doc Martens weren't enough, right? That I wanted to push that envelope a little bit. A lot of that has to do with the music I was listening to. I listened primarily to industrial music. And so, the appearance of piercings and ink in industrial music is a little more extreme. Well, I got my stacked gauges first, and I got the first set. I want to say I was 15 or 16 when I got the first set, which was not popular with my parents because I had gauges at 15 when it was not cool. So that wasn't very popular. I got my second set when I was in graduate school. So that's the gauges. And the tattoo, I didn't start getting tattoos until I was in my 40s, actually, because my parents were so against it, that we got told that we might be disowned if we got tattoos, which is why I ran such a risk with the ear gauges, right? But the first tattoo I got was the first half of my sleeve. I just sort of took a big bite. And rather than start with something small, I just said, this half of my arm, go. So the first time I had a tattoo, I sat for 6 hours while they did the first part of that upper one. So yeah, I went big my first time. I was not worried at all. I was pretty calm. I don't remember how painful it was. I remember thinking that it was painful, but I remember also telling myself in that moment that it was going to be painful the whole time, and I knew that going in. This is before piercings like that were popular, right? It was still an outsider thing. Everybody that I knew went to the mall and got their ears pierced with little tiny earrings, and that's how that was done. And I did not. Metal culture is sort of built on the idea that we're all outsiders together. I felt that it pushed me further to the fringes of whatever society I was living in, which was at that time West Texas in the 1980s. It was not fun. I feel like, it pushed me further in to the subculture that I wanted to be a part of and further out of the mainstream, which was probably my goal. It was seen as not just an outsider move, but a dangerous move, right? My parents were like, you're never going to get into college now. You're never going to get a job because of these things. You're never gonna. And they were smaller than they are now at that time.
No, I was a good girl. And, we just didn't do that. And I thought I had to have a certain image, and I was kind of a professional, and, you had to work and have a professional life and be a certain way. And so I didn't. But then, I don't know, I got in my 30s and became more of myself and who I wanted to be. And I was like, so I started off with just a little one, and then I kind of got addicted. It's just like, oh, I want another. I like that. I'm going to have another one and another one and another one. And it just kind of grew. And now I keep saying I'm going to stop, and I don't. So, yeah. The first time I drugged my friend along because I didn't know what I wanted. Mm-hmm. I found this it's covered up now. I didn't like a little sun.
Oh, yeah.
It was a tiny sun because I was nervous. I didn't know, I want to make it small and discreet, and I didn't want anybody to see it. And somebody had recommended this tattoo shop, and it was like downtown Kansas City in like this really bad neighborhood. And I dragged my friend with me, and we went down there, and it was so silly. It was just a silly thing, and it was literally the size of a dime. It was so tiny, and it took 5 minutes to do, but I thought I was so cool. And I did. I wore socks for a long time so nobody would see it, but it was like my own little secret, But then it kind of grew, and then I didn't care. I'm like, this is me, and this is what I want, and I found it pretty. So.
For me, it started at a really young age. The moment I saw the tongue split, I knew that I was going to look different. To me, tattoos were coloring books. And if our bodies are temples, don't we decorate temples? So why not decorate ourselves? That thought process behind it also caused a lot of strife in my life with my father particularly. Very much a Marine, and having anything like that was very much looked down upon. But I had such an interest in so many different things as a kid that I got to learn about like Mayans and Aztecs using different types of stone, wood, clay to represent who they were in the caste system. So when I was originally a dancer, I would wear only wood because I was a dancer. And then as I started stretching my ears more and more, and I gained more within, then I started wearing different stuff. But my father did not like any of it. I pierced my own septum when I was 13 and flipped it up for 4 years because the rule was there were no tattoos or piercings of any kind allowed in the house. Okay, so I know what to do. Pierce the one that you can't see and hide it. I got a little wild with it at one point, started piercing my eyebrows and my lips, and I would take the jewelry out when I'd get home and then put it back in. Don't do that. So much scar tissue. But I learned from the hardest person, I think, because your parents are someone who are supposed to kind of accept you unconditionally, and to an extent, obviously, but they're supposed to kind of accept you unconditionally with how you want to look and like represent and be yourself and kind of help you navigate that. And I didn't get that navigation. I got ridiculed and made fun of by basically my entire family instead, except for my cousin Stephanie and her brother Josh and Matt. Those 3 cousins saved my life when growing up on the farm. Yeah. So getting it from the person that you look up to the most and who raised you makes it really, really difficult.
Whether you feel like you want to be on the outside and you want to distinguish and differentiate yourself, or whether your senses to that are dulled and belonging is a bigger goal than, for lack of a better phrase, not belonging, right? The Midwest is a strange place to live, and it's a strange place to grow up, right? Because the Midwest and the northern part of the South, the Ozark part of the South, is different in a lot of ways. And I think people assume that the Midwest is where everything's normal, whatever that means. It's not the East Coast, it's not the West Coast, it must just be average. And the Midwest definitely has its own culture, right? And I think that culture is a lot about blending. It's a lot about establishing this baseline of normalcy, right? They don't have that in California. There's no baseline of normalcy in Seattle. There's no baseline of normalcy in Maryland, right? That's not how that works. I think that a lot of growing up in the Midwest is you deciding whether you're going to bounce around that line of stability or whether you're just going to sit on it, right? Whether you're going to accept that level of blending or you're going to refuse to blend. And that takes a lot of effort, right? To go against the mainstream, to go against the grain of things takes a lot of effort. And it takes a lot of dedication, right? But I think the people who do have a certain mindset, a certain different set of expectations and experiences, for which blending makes it not possible.
I think it's a generational thing. I've had a lot of people older than myself kind of, it's funny because I used to work at a nursing home. And the older people did not like it. They would tell me they didn't like it. They didn't agree to it. They thought it was weird. But it's become so mainstream now, thankfully. Mm-hmm. I think that people my age, younger kids, of course, younger generations, of course, I think respect it and understand it. And there's so many people now that have tattoos that it's really a normal thing. But older generations, do not like it. So they see it as a different, more, I don't know, hardcore or whatever, and a bad girl thing or bad boy thing. Well, I'm 56, so I don't know if anybody expects me to have as many as I do. I wear loafers and I work in an office, so I try to be professional in a professional setting. So if I go to, a work-related thing and I have to be dressed up, then I cover my tattoos. Or if I go to a dress, I just am respectful to the situation I'm at. So I hope that helps, but more times than not, this is who I am. So I love the art of it. It is an art form that I just truly respect. like you just take a little vial of ink and needles, and it's just amazing to me. And it takes so much time and effort, and the artists are just amazing, and the skin, like it lives and breathes, and different complexions, and it's spongy and it's weird, but yet you can make it into art. It's a little bit of therapy, like it's a little ink therapy. Some people gamble, some people get Botox, whatever the case may be. I go every couple months and I think, okay, it's time. Like I there's no set pattern. I think every time I'm going to do it is the last time. It makes me feel good about myself, and I love giving that gift to myself.
The idea that you have a relationship with the person doing the body modification is not just American. It is American in a slightly different way, but I think every culture has this a slightly different way. It is the work of a specialist, right? Whether we're talking about scarification or whether we're talking about circumcision or whether we're talking about, right? These are the work of specialists. So the specialist is somebody that somebody who is supposed to know how to manage the human body, right? Somebody who is supposed to give you the results that you're seeking, whatever those results may be. So I think everywhere in the world, there's probably a different relationship between you, the person who is essentially the canvas, and then the artist or the specialist who's doing the work. This idea that tattoo is art, that it's drawing rather than using traditional symbols or repeating traditional patterns, that we're trying to get something unique, is very American and Western European art, right? That we're not supposed to copy traditions, that we're supposed to break new ground. So that relationship may be Western European and American primarily, but even Japanese tattoo artists do unique pattern. So I think that's very culturally bound, but the idea of a relationship between the two is absolutely one that exists everywhere.
So the body mod industry before was very separated. It was more like piercers became were part of tattooers. So a tattooer was kind of the piercer as well, and it was like a side project. Originally, that was kind of how it became bigger until a one piercing studio opened up the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet then kind of expanded the horizons of the industry with piercing as well as body mods. But if it weren't for tattoo artists getting body mods, we wouldn't be exploring as much as we want, all those tattoo artists with blacked out eyeballs and such. The one tattoo they can't do themselves. But in the beginning, we were so separated in a sense when it started to become separate industries within one industry. So being so separated, we've now come from being okay, we're really separated in gatekeeping different methods of sterilization and usage of needles or usage of equipment. And now that we're all working together, we have been able to go way further in what our industry would ever thought we would be doing in this day and age. We implant RFID chips now, and you can open your car door by your hand. And so that being able for our industry to all come together and work together finally really made a difference in our industry. Yeah.
It's very important to find somebody that you can have that rapport with and trust, and not feel intimidated or shy. If they do something for you and you don't like it, you need to be able to tell them you don't like it without them getting angry at you or you agreeing to something that you really don't like. So you really have to find somebody that you jive with and that you feel comfortable with, because you spend a lot of hours with them. I mean, if you have a good tattoo, you could spend a 4-hour session and it's just you and that person, and it's a lot of time. So you need to find somebody that you feel that you can trust, that will listen to your opinions, that you can give them, this is what I vaguely want, can you make it better? And and then if you work with it to make it better. So it's learn from my mistakes. Is find a good person that you trust and stick with them, and then they understand your personality way more, and you get good quality work, and you don't have to redo it later than I did. But again, it's part of the process, so you learn.
Cultures in the United States that practice body mod. Tattoo is pretty ubiquitous in the United States at this point. I think at this point, you almost don't know somebody who doesn't have a tattoo, right? I mean, I have tattoos. They're everywhere. Piercings, earrings, piercings, that's so common. We do that with babies in the United States. But more industrial piercings are different. And that and things like scarification, branding, things that we might think more extreme in body modification terms. We're seeing that a lot in subcultures of people. Like I see that a lot with my metal fans. I see a lot of body mod going on. We see that a lot in sort of pop culture subcultures, right? Punk, metal, and I don't mean just music ones, but those sort of outsider pop culture phenomenons, right? We see a lot of tattooing and scarification. And we see a lot of scarification in American sports too, right? In sports teams and professional performers in sports, we can see a lot of tattoos and body mod in that too. And the other thing is that that's very common among the LGBTQIA community. So you can see a lot of industrial piercings, stacked piercings, tattoos, body mod. You can see all those kinds of things in LGBTQIA communities too.
The very first piercing shop was the Gauntlet, but it was owned by an openly gay man. And that's where the propaganda of having a piercing on a certain side meant that you were gay or homosexual or queer or anything of that nature. So it became a very big debacle for years. And I tell people all the time, because I still get the question to this day, which side do I do? What do you mean? Which side is which side? And they try to signal me in different ways. And I'm like, oh, well, are you? Like, no. Like, well, then there's no side. There's none side of that if you don't identify as that. So
the way that they identify each other, it's kind of a signpost phenomenon, right? And we see this in cultures around the world. Cultures use color as signpost phenomenons. They use patterns in fabric as signpost phenomenon. It's a way for you to identify somebody who feels the way you feel at a distance, right? So you can go, yeah, I see you and you see me and we have this in common. And that phenomenon for things like punk and metal, and then for subcultures like LGBTQIA plus people, that's what it does, right? It's this idea that you can see someone who identifies the way you identify. It marks some level of safety. It marks some level of acceptance. And it marks really that you're not the only one. And when you don't live in an obvious subculture, right? Like you can be a metal fan in a suit and tie. When you don't live in an obvious subculture, it's really easy for those signposts to become the only way you identify somebody else who feels the way you feel or does what you do. And I think the more edgy you get with body modification, the less likely you are to hear something supportive and positive and complimentary. What I did hear was negative. Everything that I heard was negative. I didn't get a lot of that's really cool or that's really attractive or the artistry is great or I didn't get a lot of positivity out of that. Because it's so personal, I don't want to say to people with body mod that I'm suggesting they fish for compliments. Maybe what we want to do as people with body mod is congratulate ourselves for embracing that part of our identities as clearly and publicly as we've chosen to do, rather than waiting for some external approval, right? Rather than waiting for that external, that's okay sort of movement to find some joy and some stability in your ability to do that for yourself.
So back in the day, there was this sideshow called the Jim Rose Circus Sideshow. They had a guy on there called Zamora the Torture King. And the Torture Kings are actually a long line of male fakirs. So masters of pain. You can find them all throughout the ages of circus, but there really isn't a female line. I saw Jim Rose that on TV one day, and Zamora takes a skewer and puts it through his jaw, and I was like, I can do that. So I went and got a big injection needle for one of our horses and was like, I can do that. Oh yeah. And so that became the thing. I met Zamora 6 years ago now, and I was telling him that I do the act. It was a really private, intimate show, and told him that I did the act, and he allowed me to stand on his head, and I was like fangirling, just like, everyone always stands on my head. I never get to stand on people's heads in class. And he's giggling on the ground. So I was telling him about it, and then he wrote in a book that I have, Try This at Home. And as we were talking, he was like, so you're kind of like the queen of pain. And I was like, yeah. So now I'm creating a long line of, hopefully, of women who are femme fakirs in the sideshow industry. Yeah. Queens of pain. And I am the original queen. Got it because I'm the very first woman to do the mandible skewer in the United States. In sideshow, you really only kind of make your mark at times if you're the first person, or if you create an act that is so dynamic that it just like Ripley's picks it up instantly kind of stuff. I didn't even know I was the first woman to do that until I met Captain and Maybell. And he holds the world record for sword swallowing most weight and lifting it with his jaw. Did my audition. They saw it, and everyone's coming to me and they're like, we haven't seen someone do mandible skewer since Zamora did it. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, no one does mandible skewer. It's so dangerous. And I was like, I've been doing it for like 10 years.
There are other cultures that practice suspension that have influenced now this sort of performative suspension that we do in the United States. And that performative suspension is not everywhere. It's at the more extreme end of things, but it is more apparent, more popular than it has been previously. But if you look at some indigenous North American cultures in the United States, they practice some forms of suspension. If you look at, I'm thinking, for instance, about Plains indigenous cultures, and suspending from the pectoral muscles was fairly common. So that's not a new thing. I think to put it bluntly, I think it's new for white European people, right? Where it seems extreme. Now, in the United States, that more and more often gets reserved for performance, right? Some of those performances are small and personal. Some of them are public. There used to be something called the Jim Rose Circus, for instance, where people would do body mod live and suspension and things like that. So I think that culturally, I don't know how acceptable that is broadly in American culture. Probably not very. It probably scares a lot of people. But in the world of body modification, I think there's growing understanding and acceptance of something like suspension.
I was always a natural performer. As a kid, I was a dancer. I'm classically trained. Did point for a few years till I hurt my hips. And I've been classically trained for up until I was 18. And then that's when I switched over into teaching because I couldn't dance the same way anymore due to that. So I'd always been on a stage. I was great at not talking, and I stuttered a lot. So I didn't like vocalizing anything. So being able to express myself in a physical way and getting a lot of energy out for myself in a physical way was great for me. And then I realized I was really good at it. I was like, oh, this is something that like has layers to it, and I can really explore, and I never actually have to stop learning about this thing. And that really just like hooked the passion in. So with dance, it went into belly dance, and then eventually someone gave me a shot publicly to perform. And shout out to Corey O'Meara and Chad Rettle with Shaman's Harvest. That was they're a rock band. They were my very first show. They gave me the shot, and then it just took off from there. My very first performance with hooks was with Harold here at the shop, and we were doing a Halloween show, and we did a tug of war where me and one of my other sideshow partners went back to back pulling each other across the parking lot. And so then I got the opportunity at one of our Halloween parties to actually suspend. I'd hung things off of myself before, but I'd never actually like hung my full body weight. I don't know what I was afraid of because I jumped into it and just spun in circles for like 20 minutes. It was great. So everyone's a little bit different when it comes to suspension. Everyone does suspension for different reasons. So I have some people who perform with me who literally don't want aftercare. They like slap some bandages on me and send me on my way. I'm good. And those are usually my long term, like they've been suspending for 20 years. They had a day off and was like, I just want to get some stuff out and running around. And then you've got your emotional suspenders, and usually those people kind of pair together really well, but everyone's a little bit different. I myself, I've suspended over 80 times from all different parts of my body. And when I started suspension, I went into suspension very angry. I talk about my life, about how the fun I have in it, but no one really talks about, the crappy parts of life. And I dealt with a lot of crappy parts of life growing up. And so when I got into suspension, it allowed me to release this anger. When people get body mods or tattoos or piercings, sometimes we have people that come in for memorials. And a lot of people don't realize that they're putting physical pain, they're putting their emotional pain actually into the physical pain, because you can't release the emotional pain. With emotional pain, you can't be like, oh, it's right here, I can identify it, so then I can watch it heal and I'm good. But when you put a physical pain to that, it allows you to kind of, not in a way skip, but extremely push yourself in order to release that emotional pain. Because now you have a physical, you're like, okay, that tattoo right there, got it from my grandma, cried through the whole thing, and that's okay, because now I have the physical pain to match my emotional. So when I started suspension, I was releasing a lot of anger and sadness all the time. And you could see it in the music I would play, that I would perform to, and you could see it in like my face and like how rowdy I would get on the hooks. And now I'm very much a way softer performer. Aftercare to start with, are you eating properly? What kind of physical or mental, disorders or roadblocks could we be facing here? We want to talk about it. What's your purpose with this suspension? And some people don't have a purpose. They're just like, I just need the hook. I'm like, cool, you're my adrenaline junkie. And then some people like myself, I did my ribs for the first time, and they're the guy that was my bio buddy, as we call him, is also your care buddy, someone who is there for you to talk to if things are going on and it's chaos. They are your one focal point. And so my care buddy was asking me what my purpose was, and I was telling him my Lola passed away, and I'm too afraid to go by my chest yet, but I need to be close to my heart because I need to feel that pain where I feel the pain. My aftercare on that was, I was in tears, and I've been in tears afterwards for a few suspensions. When I did my chest for the first time, I sat in the room and was just sobbing. I had done my pubic mound and my hips about 2 weeks before that. I had 5 people die all at the same period. So basically within like 6 weeks of each other, 5 very important people in my life all passed away. So I did 3 at the bottom, 2 at the top, as above, so below. The third was technically a skewer that I had during the time, so I would be even. And I just sat in the room and cried. I didn't get any massage, but typically we would do a massage. I'm experienced enough that I can go home and not do a massage and understand what my repercussions are. But if you're very newer in this, then we're going to give you a massage, because you get what's called subcutaneous emphysema. When your skin lifts apart from the fascia and that fascia disconnects, your body basically creates a suction in those holes and goes and sucks in air from that pool. And then you get blood buildup in that pocket as well. So we want to massage that out, because leftover air can cause bruising. It can leave a pocket open. It can make your muscles really sore. There's just some things that if you're not experienced enough to really know what you're working with, you are going to freak yourself out.
We see not just evidence of pain, but that maybe pain is the point, right? That pain has a purpose. And cross-culturally, the idea of pain with something like body modification is very much that pain is First of all, spiritual, because it transports you somewhere else, right? You have to overcome that pain to be on a different plane, if even for a second. And there's also these cultural concepts that withstanding pain demonstrates strength, right? So we have both of those things going on. We have both of those phenomenon. And yeah, pain is a part of it, right? I mean, I hope nobody goes in for a tattoo and thinks, oh, it's not going to hurt, right? Because they're kidding themselves. So yeah, you go in with the full knowledge that it's going to be painful, that it's going to be painful for a while, and you do it anyway, right? There is almost, at least in North America, there's almost a rite of passage sort of feel to it at this point, right? Your first tattoo is like your driver's license or your first car. It's starting to be that sort of thing. In other cultures, it's always been that way.
I tell people all the time a really good quote from Dee Snider's Strangeland. Pain is a uniquely personal experience. That anger I talked about getting out earlier, that came with pain. So the pain that I experienced earlier in my life, everything I do now seems minuscule compared to it. So that's where I like to try finding that challenge. Tattooing pain is one of the few pains I cannot get past. I know I am heavily covered, but for me, it takes me back to a time in my mind that I have not either healed from, or just psychosomatically my body transfers that into tattooing. But it's a thing that I can't get past. I give them a few hours and I'm like, oh, we're done. We'll finish this another time. Because I can only push myself so long with tattooing. But suspension and my sideshow skewer stuff, that is completely different for me. I am like complete anxiety until I get my hooks. I know what a hook's going to feel like. I know all of that. But there's always this moment in the back of my mind that I'm like, what if this is the one? What if this is the one that I can't get up on? It's my back. I've done it 20 times, 30 times, 40 times, but what if this is the time I can't get up? And when you're a performer standpoint of it, the show has to go on. And that's the hardest part, is that like being able to get what you want out of suspension while having to push yourself with that back of your thought. When you're doing it for yourself, my mind's a completely different ballgame. When I'm doing it personally and alone, my mind is not blank. My mind is like a ball of thoughts, and it is like meditation for me. I'm able to kind of regulate and understand like where everything I've been feeling at lately is, and like pinpoint, and I can have full discussions in my head. And then I come down from that and I'm like, cool. All right. I know what I want to do now. But performance wise, it's like a whole other person up there. I give up freedom in a way, but you'll see it in my face. That I'm like experiencing something, because if I'm smiling through the whole thing, that is a performer like kind of personality. The moment you see my face kind of like darken for a second, that's when you know from an audience standpoint that like, oh, she's processing something. And that's when you know like I'm having to fight the fact of like I need to process and perform at the same time. And so I have to find those like 30-second moments where I know that this is going to be a really, really long swing, and I can just, okay, meditate for a second. Okay, come back. Bio's there, bio's there, bio's there. Cool, belay. Good, good, good. Push me. Meditate for a second. And it's like that. And I have to find those moments, and I had to learn. It's where a lot of people get body suspension when it comes as a performance wrong, is that it's really hard to actually do this in front of a crowd, because we have to learn how to get what we need out of suspension while also making sure that people are entertained to some degree. And that's a really hard thing to do, to allow yourself to feel in front of an audience and process when you know it's a show. So I've started talking to my girls and telling them, just let it out. You're not the ones there on hooks. You want to cry? Cry. That is a show. It is not what the show looks like. It is what you pull from watching it. Everyone can interpret art differently. So it's all how you interpret it.
I think my favorite ones, I have some that really are just pretty and they have no meaning to them, but I do have several in honor of people or as a relationship. I have my best friends and I got one together, so it kind of bonds. My sister and I have one together. Madeline and I have one together. My sons and I have one together. They're more special to me because the symbol, it bonds me to that person. It honors that person. I carry with them all the time. So those are my favorite ones. When I finished my journey through cancer and all my chemo and radiation and stuff, my two best friends and I went and got matching tattoos. So that was kind of my celebration, and it meant a lot to me because, Brooke had never had a tattoo before. So it was her first one. It's her first and only one.
This sleeve is a memorial tattoo from beginning to end. I lost both my parents and my little brother within 4 years, all from cancer. So this arm is all symbolism from the farm I grew up on and my parents and my little brother. So it's flowers and birds and signatures and symbols and things like that. So it's a pretty big nature scene on this arm. This arm's going to be a heavy metal arm. It's going to be much different. It's going to be sort of like night and day on these arms. But that's the topic of this one.
I don't know if it represents anybody but me. I wish it did. I wish it was deeper than that, but it's not. It's just, it's kind of just my gift to myself of taking care of myself. And some of it, I think, is a self-esteem thing too. It makes me feel better about myself and more confident about myself.
It's like your art.
It is
you're
my
putting art on you.
Exactly. And it covers up my imperfections and, makes those things prettier.
The one thing I tell everybody is that informed consent is a real thing. We choose to look this way. We choose to go out in public this way. We know that in the society of today, it is not exactly smiled upon, in a lack of a better choice of words, not exactly looked at lightly with how we look. So walking out into society, I know that I am going to get dirty looks. I know that I'm going to hear remarks underneath people's breaths. I've heard it from people left and right. Oh, why'd you ruin your pretty face? Stop messing up your face. Stop doing this. Oh, you got these and now your hands look ugly. And I've heard it all. But I know that I chose to look this way. And in our society and how humanity works, they're going to speak out. That is how we are. We're human. So if someone feels the need to come to me and say it directly to my face, let's talk about this. I'm not even going to fight you or anything. We are going to talk about this because you came at me with anger and disgust and you don't even know me. You know nothing about me. You just see it from the way I look. So tell me, what is it about the way I look that makes you feel so afraid or makes you feel so, not even scared, but just so judgmental of me? Where in your life? Let's talk. Because I might make a cool friend out of it. We might not ever be friends. We might just leave with different perspectives. You might change my mind on some stuff, and heck, I might get laser tattoos. Who knows? But without communication and actually opening that, we don't learn anything about anybody in this life.
There's a place for everybody, for everybody and everybody, right? And that there is a culture for you regardless of where you sit on this playing field that is, for today, body modification, right? I would also say I want everybody to know that a body mod does not make you dangerous. It does not make you scary. It does not make you threatening. And I still see that a lot. People with body modification, people with industrial piercings getting treated like they are dangerous or scary. People with facial tattoos getting treated like they're threatening. And there's nothing threatening about body modification. That's a personal experience. It's not one intended for everybody. It's not a performance. It's a personal experience. If you don't understand about body modification and therefore the modifications that I have chosen to do to my body, then that's okay. That it's not my job to make you comfortable with them, right? It's not my job to teach you how to accept me.
Don't let anyone yell at you, but don't break who you are, and don't let them get a rise out of you because that's what they want. They can stare at you all they want. And the only reason why they talk about you is because if they talked about themselves, no one would listen. I always tell people all the time to remember that the kids are the future of our industry, no matter what industry you're in. So you have to influence children in a positive way. I was that kid who pierced themselves. So as a piercer, I want to be the piercer that you could call and be like, hey, I did a dumb thing at home and I need help. And I want to be that person, be like, it's okay. I've done it. Trust me, I have. Here's what we're going to do. Come see me. Let's check out your jewelry. Let's just get you to a healthy spot. Let's just do that. I don't want them to feel judged by our industry for wanting to do things at home and wanting to learn these things, because that is how most of our industry came around. 5,000 years ago, people were doing my job with sticks and bones and carved rock, smashed up berries and charcoal to create ink. We got to remember that if we keep influencing people in a professional yet helpful and positive way in this industry, so many people will be so much more accepting of it because it's been around for centuries, and in a positive light at that. And being able to help kids be the kid that I was and doing positive. So instead of being like, oh yeah, they're like, I love your hair or I love your piercings. I'm like, yeah, you can totally do this when you graduate college. And parents will hear me like kind of help kids reinforce, because I know that my industry is sometimes not always a career one. So you can have dreams, but always have a fallback with it. I always convince my girls as well, like there needs to be Grace's in school still. She's taking a break currently, but I'm like, you need to have a backup because this may not live forever. We may have a recession that kills our industry. We may have many things that could kill this for us. And we want to make sure that you're still good. So I always tell the kids, yes, this is the fun life. Make sure you balance out that professional side too, so you can keep yourself going and really enjoy what we do.
If it's happened everywhere around the world throughout history, then you could just chalk this up to human behavior, right? That human beings do body modification culturally for cultural reasons, and that it is ubiquitous. And so its history may just show us different stages of development of something that is just human behavior. Our personal identities are so ingrained in our experiences in life, and the way that we're brought up in our enculturation. It's so wound in so many different ways. There's a fabric interwoven with all these warps and wefts, right? And all of those are individual personalities. So they make up the culture, the larger culture. But without it, you don't have the uniqueness that is necessary for a culture to thrive and survive.
I won't fight you. I've had people throw stuff at me. I've had people throw drinks at me and dump things on me. And I think the one that hurts the most is when people don't realize that I'm a mother myself, and I watch people pull their kids away from me. And I'm like, man, you have no clue at all. Like I have an almost 13-year-old, and he grew up in the sideshow life with me, traveling around, touring, partly homeschooled, doing all of that. So that's like the most hurtful, is because I know that they're placing those judgments on those kids. So I always just kind of approach them with a smile and do that. It makes it better when I go to the schools, though, to pick up my kid. Parents may look at me weird, but those kids all know who Miss V is, and they all love coming up to say hi to me. To them, I'm the coolest. And that's children are so innocent. So to be thought of so purely like that, like, just makes my heart like feel so like. I guess that's the change now. Yeah, it's the challenge. So now I'm constantly challenging myself. I don't like doing things that are easy anymore, but I know I can just throw and go. It's the
all right, how weird can I get with this? Like,